analysis indicated that's what they had. And how they got their hands on it is a very interesting question. You know, a couple of them, that's one thing. The question is how many of them were given to the opposition, and were they given to them or were they stolen from them? And that's what I don't know. So they're benefiting from us fighting over there for their influence, for their cause. And maybe they were one of the major powers behind this whole scenario that got us into this war. All right, so if you want to ask how you went, I was going to start talking about their initial history to show how they got from where they are to where we are today.
Please.
All right. This is off the link. Let me put it up for you. It was from the LaRoche group. They put out Dope Inc. And we'll just review some of that real quick. Let me find it. There we go. Because this article shows a lot of who and what they are. All right? So let's get to it. Bronfman crime family is best known for its ownership of Seagram's, the largest liquor company in North America. Okay? The family's holdings stretch from whiskey, banking, mining, real estate, less publicized narcotics. They're regarded as respectable, outstanding philanthropists whose name is attached to everything important in Canada and Israel, to government and cultural affairs. That probably ties into how you see the treatment of people there in family court. That's part of their program. This was not always the profile of the Bronfman family. 50 years ago, they were known as the largest bootleggers in North America. They were referred to be less prestigious to a name called the Bronfman gang. The Bronfmans always had been beholden to the TruthBrigade elite. The first members of the family came to North America was Yakov Bronfman, a grist mill owner from Romania, who changed his name when he got over to Canada and set up a Jewish colonization committee, and this happened in 1889. The initial enterprise, to establish a Jewish colony for the Bronfmans was initiated in 1872 between Baron Maurice de Hirsch and Baron Alfred de Rothschild, other people who established the Jewish Colony Association were being selected from Russia and Eastern European Jews for these agricultural settlements in Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Those are two provinces of Canada. All right. Then they had the period of, that was when it started out in agricultural in the, basically from 1890. Starting around 1910, they got into, let's see, let me just read this real fast here. I'll just have to read this. From 1910, marked a period of transfer from Warburg, Golan, and our crowd migration from Germany and Britain into Lower Manhattan. In 1912, Siegfried Montefiore arrived in Montreal, where he lived until he died in 1950. Lord Harold Montefiore, current head of the Jerusalem Foundation, the Zionist wing of the most venerable order of St. John of Jerusalem, was sent to Canada for his early education. Baron de Hirsch established the de Hirsch Foundation in Canada as an umbrella for all Canadian Jewish philanthropic activities, and the Montefiores created a club named after the family to service the resident elites. The Rothschilds also planted a branch of their family in Canadian soil. So it indicates that the Rothschild barons were involved with establishing and setting up the Bronfman family in Canada, starting in the primarily in 1890s going forward. So there's a direct connection with the Rothschild family from Europe, establishing the Bronfman family in Canada. That tells you where their roots come from.
Wow. Well, that's pretty revealing. I mean, wow. Okay. I mean, it's just, I'm curious, you know, I'm puzzled why we hear the Rockefeller and Rothschilds, but never Bronfmans.
Right. Right. How about
so,
that?
Yeah, that's pretty hidden. You had to search hard for that.
Correct. We just didn't know them by their name over here. Okay. In Yiddish, Bronfman means liquor man. The Bronfmans started out as bootleggers, the hotel business. And around 1915, Canada had prohibition. And the Bronfmans were the ones who set up the speakeasies in Canada at that point. Somewhere in the mid-20s, Canada gave up on prohibition, and then the United States started it. So they were already experts on how to deal with bootlegging and prohibition. The 1920s prohibition in the U.S. and the birth of organized crime capitulated the Bronfmans into a multimillionaire bracket and status as the untouchable kingpins of crime in North America. So by the 1920s, they were known as the real untouchables. Okay, so you talk about Eliot Ness, even Eliot Ness, the books. Where do you hear them talk about the Bronfmans? Okay, you hear them talk about, if you look at the old movies, you know, with Eliot Ness, they talk about all the bootlegging and activities are coming from Canada, but they never identify that that was the Bronfman crime family, that were those bootleggers doing that to us.
Okay.
Okay. In 1916, the Bronfmans established opium trade. It was Samuel and Abe Bronfman and his 4 sons and 2 of Eichel's sons collaborated with the Hudson Bay Company, in which the Keswick family of Jardine Madison had a control interest to buy Canadian Pure Drug Company. In this way, the Bronfmans rushed into the loophole in the War Measures Act. This is going back into the 1919 era, and permitted distribution by pharmacists of alcohol for medicinal purposes. Okay. Canadian prohibition ended in 1919. The Bronfman family simply turned from whiskey importing to whiskey exporting. And that was, after it was all over in 1936, the Bronfmans agreed to pay $1.5 million to settle their account with U.S. Treasury. Okay? The sum amounted to admission that half the liquor that came in the United States prohibition was from the liquormen. So 50% of all the alcohol that was used during prohibition came from the Bronfman crime family into the U.S.
Wow.
All right. Now, their control of the liquor flow during Prohibition gave the Bronfmans life and death control over American crime, okay, because they control that. Refusing to play ball with the Bronfman crime family, this is, you know, the gangster era, you know, the Capone and all those guys, used to spell death to independent-minded gang bosses who were known to be executed by their lieutenants on the Bronfmans' behalf. One of the buyers best liked by the gang was a New York City beer baron known as Arthur Flegenheimer, the Dutch Schultz, or the Purple Gang. Okay? Who succeeded in wiping out his competition, the notorious Lake Diamond. Schultz himself was later rubbed out when he took it on himself to head murdering crusade of, he attempted to murder Thomas Dewey, and they took him out through Lucky Luciano. I'll get to that in a minute, but I'll just summarize it. The initial members to form the syndicate, Johnny Torrio, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, they were all Bronfman crime family members.
Wow, we've heard all these names.
Right, the Johnny Torrio gang. And they had that conference, the Atlantic City conference in 1922 or 1927. I'll look it up for you, put it up. It was called The Meet.